Hey guys, tonight we drift far away from your climate-controlled room and into something stickier, louder, and much less survivable. You're waking up in the middle of an Indian monsoon season somewhere around 300 BCE. The sun hasn't even peeked over the horizon, but you're already wide-eyed because something just squelched under your sleeping mat. Yep, that was probably a frog, or a very bold leech. Either way, good morning. You're lying in a thatched hut made of mud and bamboo, with a roof that's done its best to keep out the rain. But let's just say, best isn't great. The floor, it's not a floor, it's the earth. And after weeks of monsoon downpour, that earth is a gloopy, ankle-deep soup of clay water and animal droppings. You step out of bed, barefoot of course, into the slick mud. Slip once, and you're taking a full-body mud bath, no extra charge. Outside, the village is already buzzing. You hear the thwack of laundry being beaten against rocks down by the stream. Roosters are crowing, goats are yelling, and someone's toddler is absolutely losing it about a missing mango. You shuffle out, trying to look like you belong, but you don't. Everyone can tell. You're too clean, too soft, too modern. You see, ancient Indian life wasn't built for tourists. It was built for endurance. And right now, your body hasn't even adjusted to the climate, let alone the customs. Your lungs are gulping down humid air that feels like trying to breathe through a warm towel. Your tunic, borrowed from a surprisingly kind old man last night, is already stuck to your back with sweat and something suspiciously gritty. And speaking of sweat, let's talk deodorant. It doesn't exist. What does exist? A delightful concoction involving crushed camphor rose petals and occasionally powdered cow dung. Yes, that's right. In some regions, animal waste wasn't just fertilizer, it was functionally fibrosi. Historians still argue whether this was ritual medicinal or just an elaborate prank on future archaeologists. You drag your feet toward the stream for a rinse. But bathing here is a group activity. Elders, kids, livestock. It's a communal splash party whether you like it or not. And, oh, look, a water snake just zipped past your ankle. You leap back. A grandmother chuckles at your expense. She's seen 3 monsoons before you were born, and she hasn't missed a single bath. After a hasty rinse in your clothes, of course, nudity is frowned upon unless you're a sadhu, or under 2 years old, you head back toward your hut. On the way, you get lightly scolded by a passing merchant for stepping on his rice mat. Not on purpose, of course. But here, personal space is sacred and textiles even more so. You mumble an apology, hoping he didn't just curse you. And let's pause here. Imagine what it's like to never be dry. Ever. Not your clothes, not your bedding, not your socks if you had any. The air is so saturated it might as well be soup. Your skin starts to wrinkle like you've spent the whole day in a bath, except that bath was made of hot breath and mosquito larvae. Oh yes, the mosquitoes. They're everywhere, and they are not shy. One of them is practically mugging you right now. The others are coordinating a high-pitched chorus right in your ears. It turns out ancient Indian mosquitoes have a PhD in persistence. You wave them away, but they return with friends. You wander through the muddy village paths, careful not to slip on a wandering cow pie. Holy cows roam freely, and swatting them away is strictly off-limits, unless you're interested in sparking an angry mob or eternal karmic debt. To distract yourself from the general squelch of it all, you try to orient your day. Maybe you'll help someone with field work. You're certainly not ready to till rice paddies, but maybe something more relaxing, like weaving. No such luck. Someone mistakes your hesitation for volunteerism, and next thing you know, you're roped into helping reinforce a clay wall that's slumping from all the rain. You're handed a basket of wet mud and a very vague instruction to press it like dough. The walls here are made using a technique called wattle and daub, a combo of woven sticks and thick mud paste. Incredibly durable, if done right. You're doing it wrong. By the time the sun actually rises, you've got mud in your teeth, 3 bug bites on your neck, and one very judgmental rooster following you around like he's seen things he can't unsee. A local teenager passes by and kindly offers you a handful of betel leaf to chew on, sort of an ancient energy drink. You take a bite, immediately regret it, and try to smile through the taste of spicy soil and minty regret. So far, you've survived barely. But the day hasn't even started. You're hungry, drenched, and unsure which of your limbs is sorest. You sit on a damp log, trying to wring out your tunic when a child points to your strange shoes. Rubber soles a dead giveaway, and then to your pale ankles. He giggles. You don't know why. You will soon, and there you are, an outsider in every possible way. Your sleep schedule is shattered. Your clothes are wrong. You smell like mud and mosquito tears. You've sweated out half your body weight, and you still haven't had breakfast. And remember, this is just the calm before the actual challenges. There's labor customs, food, marriage rules, public shame, temple rituals, and about 8 different ways to accidentally offend someone, or die tragically before sundown. So, before we dig into the belly of this ancient beast, take a deep breath. The air smells like damp incense and disappointment. You're going to need your strength. You're starving. Not, I skipped lunch, starving more, like I woke up ankle-deep in muck, got bitten by 17 different bugs, and accidentally insulted a rice merchant, kind of starving. Your stomach is now fully mutinous, staging tiny protests in the form of growls loud enough to earn curious glances from a passing cow. And no, she's not here to help. So you wander toward the scent of smoke where someone blessed someone is cooking. The smell is earthy, a bit acrid, but undeniably warm and food-like. Your hopes rise. Maybe some flatbread, nice chickpea stew, a little chai. Nope. What you get is a steaming clay bowl of something beige. It's mostly water with some root chunks bobbing on top like tiny ghosts. You peer into it. Is that a yam, a radish, a chunk of yesterday's broom? You're not sure, and asking would definitely be rude. This, you learn, is a common morning meal, boiled roots or porridge made from millet or rice depending on the region. No salt, no sugar, no spices unless you're royalty, or you made really good offerings at temple last week. And speaking of offerings, your breakfast might actually be leftovers from one. You sit on a low stool made of woven reeds, trying not to look too obviously like a person who regularly Instagrams their brunch. The family who's feeding you watches closely. Their son, maybe 7 years old, is staring you down like you're a magic trick that hasn't finished. You smile awkwardly. He doesn't blink. As you bring the first spoonful to your mouth, a fly lands on the rim of your bowl. You hesitate. So does everyone else, waiting to see if you'll lose face. You eat it. Not the fly, just the porridge. It tastes like wet pencil shavings. You nod politely. Everyone nods back. You've passed the test. Well, mostly, because then comes the goat. He appears from behind the hut, bleats once, and stares into your soul. He's the family's pride and joy. He gives milk when he feels like it eats trash and doubles as a space heater in winter. But today, he's also very interested in your breakfast. One bleat becomes two. A nudge. Then a full-blown headbutt to your thigh. You almost drop the bowl. The grandmother laughs so hard she cries, which makes everyone else laugh, which somehow makes the goat feel more confident. You fend him off with a gentle shove and a silent prayer that rabies hasn't been invented yet. So, there you are, chewing flavorless mush, while being low-grade assaulted by livestock and high-key, judged by people whose ancestors probably invented yoga before breakfast. You manage to finish half the bowl before someone decides it's time for tea. Now, tea here doesn't mean a hot, comforting cup of Earl Grey. It's more like boiled leaves with herbs and the occasional dash of jaggery if you're lucky. No milk, no dainty cups. It's poured from a soot-blackened pot into a clay cup that still smells faintly of the last 12 things it contained. Possibly garlic, possibly goat. You sip. It's strong. It wakes up parts of your brain that were peacefully slumbering, including one that now reminds you that your stomach hasn't handled unfamiliar microbes in centuries. You try not to think about that. Or the fact that nobody washed their hands before preparing any of this. Fun fringe fact. Ancient Indian cuisine wasn't just about survival, it was also deeply intertwined with Ayurveda. That's a medical philosophy where food is medicine, and every ingredient has a purpose. Your bland bowl of roots. It might be vata calming, or it might just be what was left after the monkeys raided the storage again. Historians still argue whether these early diets were mainly for balance and health, or simply a result of climate availability and trade routes. Either way, you're definitely not getting bacon or pancakes. Not now, not ever. You lean back, bowl empty stomach, semi-satisfied, when your host offers you a tooth-cleaning twig. It's from a neem tree, he says, and he demonstrates by chewing on one end until it frays into a brush-like tip. You do the same. It's bitter astringent, and very much the opposite of minty freshness, but your teeth do feel cleaner. Or maybe just stunned. You're finally starting to think, okay, I've eaten. I'm adjusting. And then you sneeze. Loudly. Everything stops. Someone gasps. The grandmother mutters something that sounds like a prayer. You realize you sneezed during an auspicious moment just as a nearby elder was starting his morning chant. You apologize, but it's too late. The goat snorts disapprovingly. The elder frowns. A young woman nearby spits 3 times into the dirt, not at you, just to ward off evil spirits. It's fine. You're fine. Except for your digestive system, which now has about 7 minutes before the incoming microbial insurgency makes its presence known. So you shuffle away from the breakfast area, trying to remember where the latrine is. Spoiler, there is no latrine. But that's a problem for the next section. Right now, you're trying to be grateful for a warm meal, even if it tasted like the inside of a wooden bowl that's never been washed. And if you're thinking, this is a lot for breakfast, just remember, nobody here is coddling you. This is normal. This is routine. This is what sustains a civilization that will last for millennia, while your AirPods probably won't survive the monsoon. Still, there's something kind of magical about it, isn't there? The smoke, the soft crackle of firewood, the ancient rituals that make even the blandest meal feel significant. Or maybe that's the tea talking. Either way, your day has just begun, and your stomach is about to have some very loud opinions about it. Your stomach's making some interesting noises, none of them subtle. The kind of gurgling that usually signals either an alien parasite or, more likely in this case, imminent disaster. So, now you're on a mission. Not for knowledge, not for spiritual growth. You're on the hunt for a bathroom. Except, well, there isn't one. Not in the way you know it. There's no porcelain throne awaiting your royal descent. No plumbing. No scented candles. What you've got is the wide-open world and a small designated area behind a row of thorny bushes that functions as the community's sanitation zone. And that's being generous. You walk with purpose, or as much purpose as one can have while simultaneously trying to maintain dignity, avoid puddles, and ignore the goat that's been following you since breakfast. The path leads past some grain stores, a suspiciously quiet dog, and a woman drying fish on a woven mat. She doesn't even look up. This is all very normal to her. You find the spot. It's just a shallow pit, barely hidden by some branches, and it smells exactly like you feared it would. There's a flat rock nearby that probably doubles as both a seat and a step. You take a breath, which you immediately regret, and prepare for what is likely the least glamorous moment of your journey. Now you're thinking, at least there's toilet paper. Nope. What you get is a small earthen pot filled with water, and maybe a smooth stone if you're lucky. Hygiene practices here revolve around the left hand, which means your right hand better stay pure for eating and greeting. Forget this rule, and you'll offend someone and possibly be ritually cleansed in front of the whole village. Slowly, with cold water. And now the real challenge, squatting. Not a Western gym squat. A full, heels-on-the-ground, knees-spread, thighs-burning kind of crouch that takes more flexibility than most people possess unless they've been practicing since toddlerhood. You try. You wobble. You topple forward slightly. A small lizard watches with what could only be described as smugness, but you make it work. Sort of. You do what you came here to do, and you manage not to lose your balance into the pit, which earns you a silent victory dance in your mind. That goat still watching. Probably judging. Fun side note. Ancient Indian sanitation was in some regions surprisingly advanced. Places like Mohenjo-Daro had covered drains and early forms of sewage systems. But that was centuries ago, and rural life now in 300 BCE is more minimalist. The philosophy waste returns to the earth. Composting the old school way. It's practical. It's natural. And it is definitely not comfortable. Historians still argue whether rural sanitation practices in ancient India were guided more by environmental wisdom or sheer necessity. Either way, they worked with what they had. And what you've got right now is a strong breeze in a very compromising position. You clean yourself as best as the tools allow, then return to the village, trying to walk like someone who did not just have a life-altering moment behind a bush. The good news, you survived. The bad news, you might need to do that again before lunch. You try to find a place to rinse off your hands carefully using only your left, and that's when a friendly elder offers you a bowl of water. You almost grab it with the wrong hand. Almost. But he sees the hesitation in your eyes, gives a tiny nod, and passes it over with a half smile. He gets it. You're not from here, but you're trying. And, for now, that's enough. Feeling somewhat refreshed emotionally, if not physically, you begin to notice just how much effort goes into cleanliness here. Women sweeping the ground outside their homes with grass brooms. Ash being sprinkled in fire pits to absorb odors. Children being scrubbed with river mud to exfoliate their skin. Even with minimal tools, there's a constant rhythm of washing, rinsing, wiping, and airing out. Cleanliness isn't just hygiene. It's a form of respect. For others, for the gods, for the land. And that's when the realization hits you. Privacy is a luxury of the future. Here, privacy is rare and often non-existent. Everything you do from eating to bathing to relieving yourself happens within the fabric of community life. Your every movement is part of a shared experience, a group story, including the fact that, unbeknownst to you, someone saw your awkward bush squat earlier and is now imitating you for their friends. You hear giggles. You turn. The mimicry is accurate and not flattering. You sigh. You've been here less than a full day, and already you're becoming local legend. Not for your wisdom, not for your bravery, but for your bathroom ballet. You retreat back to your hut, dodging goats and shame alike, and try to regroup. You're starting to understand something vital. Ancient life doesn't care about your comfort, not even a little. It's built on routine, on custom, on shared spaces and shared duties. It's not about indulgence. It's about function. And right now, your next function is figuring out how to contribute before someone ropes you into hauling manure or worse water from the river half a mile away. But more on that later. Right now, just be grateful the pit didn't collapse. Trust me. That happens sometimes. You're barely done wiping the metaphorical sweat from your brow, and probably the literal kind too when someone hands you a rope. Just like that. No explanation. No hello again. No hope you enjoyed your squat of shame. Just a coiled rope and a single nod toward the edge of the village. Ah, right. It's your turn to help fetch water. You consider protesting, maybe faking an injury, or claiming you're allergic to heavy lifting, but there's no room for excuses here. Everyone pulls their weight, even kids. Even elderly women who look like they've wrestled time and won. So, off you go, following a group of villagers who look very comfortable, balancing clay pots on their heads, chatting effortlessly, as they walk barefoot over hot stones and thorny twigs. You meanwhile are already limping. The sun is higher now. It's not even noon, and it feels like the sky itself is trying to roast you alive. Your skin, still adjusting from the 21st century, and its SPF luxuries is turning a charming shade of lobster. That neem twig you chewed earlier might double as sunscreen if you're desperate enough. As you trudge toward the water source, a large river, or maybe just a muddy tributary. Depending on the season, you begin to appreciate something important. Water is precious. Not just because it's scarce, but because it takes effort. Real, sweaty, spine-bending effort. When you arrive, there's already a small crowd gathered. Some are bathing modestly, covered with wet cotton cloths. Others are filling pots or washing garments by slapping them rhythmically against flat river stones. The sound is oddly soothing, like nature's version of a drum circle. You try not to stare too long, though. Remember, privacy isn't a thing here, and you're probably the weird one for even thinking about it. You receive your assignment. It's simple. Fill this pot, roughly the size and weight of a rebellious toddler, and carry it back without spilling. You're handed a ladle made from a gourd and pointed toward the riverbank. You kneel down, trying not to slide in. The water is cloudy warm and full of mysterious floaties. Possibly leaves. Possibly not. Once the pot is full, someone tries to help you hoist it onto your head. You resist. Surely there's another way, like carrying it in your arms, or inventing a wheelbarrow. They insist. It goes on your head. You wobble. You stagger. Your neck issues a formal complaint. But somehow, through sheer panic and the power of public embarrassment, you stay upright. Sort of. The pot leans dangerously sloshes a bit, and you begin your slow, tense march back to the village. This you think is ridiculous. Who carries things on their head in 100-degree heat? Everyone, apparently. It's efficient. It keeps your hands free. And if you've been doing it since age 5, it doesn't even feel that heavy. But you look like a very tired flamingo trying to do yoga on a tightrope. Your knees buckle slightly at every step. A child jogs past you with 2 pots balanced perfectly, barely breaking a sweat. You silently curse their superior posture. Quirky tidbit time. Some regions used water-carrying songs, rhythmic chants that kept walkers in sync and distracted from the back pain. You try humming one that someone nearby is singing, and it actually helps, until you lose your balance for half a second and nearly drench a passing farmer. He sidesteps expertly, doesn't even look annoyed. He's seen worse. You're clearly the village entertainment today. Historians still argue whether water roles were divided strictly by gender, or if it was more fluid, no pun intended, depending on region and caste. What's certain is that water collection was a daily ordeal, not a task, a ritual. It defined your morning. It shaped your schedule. It determined who ate, who bathed, and who went without. When you finally miraculously return to your hut with a still mostly full pot, your arms feel like jelly, and your scalp has definitely taken a beating. There's a small bruise forming where the rim pressed down. But you made it. People nod in vague approval. Someone offers you a sip of tamarind water. It's tart, slightly fermented, and tastes like success. Just when you think it's time for a break, you notice your neighbors heading off again. More chores, more hauling, more surviving. No rest for the slightly sunburned. You try to duck into some shade, maybe sit for 5 minutes, but that's when someone motions toward a large woven basket of cow dung cakes, stacked like misshapen pancakes. They hand you a paddle. You realize slowly and with growing horror that it's time to smear the walls with a fresh layer of, this is the fuel for cooking. Dried cow dung mixed with straw and molded into flat discs, then dried in the sun. It's surprisingly effective, relatively smokeless, and very eco-friendly. It's also the last thing your 21st century brain wanted to touch today. Still, you help. You pat. You smear. You try not to breathe through your nose. It's warm, squishy, and oddly meditative. You've crossed some kind of mental barrier now. You're part of this strange, ancient dance of labor and necessity. And you're starting to realize something else. Survival here isn't just about effort. It's about rhythm. Everyone has a role. Everyone keeps moving. The whole village hums like a living organism, and for better or worse, you're one of its cells now. You wipe your hands on a bit of grass, which helps almost not at all, and sit under a banyan tree, dizzy but proud. You've hauled water, battled balance, and come face to face with cow-fueled cooking. Not bad for your first real morning. And while the goat is still following you now, he seems less like a stalker and more like a mildly disappointed life coach. You can live with that. Or at least, you can try. The air smells like turmeric and wood smoke now. That means one thing: mealtime's coming. And while your stomach rumbles like a war drum, let's just take a moment to remember what you won't be getting. No pizza, no chocolate lava cake, and definitely no sparkling water with a twist of lime. Instead, you follow the scents and settle near a low earthen stove where 2 women are expertly flipping flatbreads on a metal griddle. They're sitting cross-legged hands moving with machine-like precision rolling dough, patting it thin, tossing it on the hot plate, flipping it with bare fingers like it's not basically molten metal. You make eye contact with one of them. She smiles faintly and gestures to sit. This is a good sign. You've passed enough silent tests for the day to earn a spot at the communal meal. Here's how it works. Everyone gathers in a circle, usually on the floor, or packed dirt, and waits quietly as food is served by hand. No buffet lines, no trays, no menus. You get what's made, and you eat it how they do with your right hand, pinching and scooping like a pro. Except you're not a pro. You try tearing the roti, but it fights back. You manage a chunk, dip it into a bowl of steaming dal that's lentil stew for the record, and aim for your mouth. Most of it makes it. Some lands on your tunic. It's fine. Nobody says anything. But you catch the glint of amusement in the eyes of an old man across from you. The dal is simple but flavorful, spiced with cumin ginger, and something earthy you can't quite place. Maybe asafoetida, the infamous devil's dung spice. Smells awful raw. Tastes incredible cooked. Go figure. There's also a heap of boiled rice, a blob of yogurt, a few roasted vegetables, and surprise a dollop of mango pickle that nearly sets your mouth on fire. You choke slightly, sip some warm water, and nod like you meant to do that. Here's a fun historical fact. For your sweating face, most people in ancient India followed vegetarian diets, especially in regions influenced by Jainism, Buddhism, and certain branches of Hinduism. Meat wasn't totally absent, but it was rare and often avoided out of spiritual or ethical considerations. That said, dairy was big, milk, ghee, clarified butter yogurt. Cows weren't food, they were sacred. Historians still argue whether the widespread vegetarianism was driven more by religion economy or ecological necessity. Whatever the root the effect is, clear this society has built an entire cuisine out of plants and spice. And it's good. Seriously good. Even without cheese. But here comes the quirky part. The concept of hot, fresh food wasn't just about taste. In Ayurvedic tradition, the ancient Indian system of health and medicine, freshly cooked meals were believed to carry life energy prana. Leftovers, spiritually suspect. Cold food. Basically, digestive sabotage. So your plate's contents aren't just nourishment. They're tiny alchemical miracles meant to balance your doshas. You have no idea what those are yet, but you assume yours are a mess. The group eats mostly in silence, maybe with a few murmurs or soft laughter. No phones, no TV, no multitasking. Just food and presence. It's kind of nice, until someone drops a bowl. It hits the ground with a loud plop, spilling yogurt everywhere. And suddenly, there's a flurry of activity. The person who spilled leaps up, starts cleaning frantically, and everyone else politely looks away. Not because they don't care, but because shame is a private affair here. Public accidents happen. What matters is how you handle them. There's no paper towel in sight. Just sandcloth and dignity. Eventually, the mess is gone and the meal resumes as though nothing happened. But you notice something nobody threw a fit. Nobody scolded. Everyone just adapted. There's a lesson in that, somewhere between the dal and the mango firebomb. After the meal, the cleanup begins. Again, no dishwasher, no running faucet. Just a few clay pots, a bucket of water, and a piece of coconut husk that works as a scouring pad. You volunteer to help. A woman hands you a pot with a bit of leftover ghee hardened at the bottom. You try scrubbing. It smears. She shows you a technique: scrape, swirl water, toss the rinse outside for the birds. You nod, pretending this isn't wildly outside your skill set. Then there's the matter of leftovers, which don't really exist. Every meal is cooked to the exact amount needed, and anything that remains goes to animals or the fire. Waste is an insult to the earth, and frankly, you're starting to agree. You wash your hands again, yes, still just the left, and sit in the shade belly, full arms sore and surprisingly content. There's a rhythm to all this. Labor, eat, clean, rest. Repeat. No emails, no deadlines. Just life in its purest, most hands-on form. You spot the goat again. It's now lounging under a tree, chewing something that might once have been your dignity. It looks at you like, see not so hard. You lie back, listening to the quiet murmur of village life, a baby fussing the flap of laundry in the wind, the soft hiss of firewood crackling. There's a sense of calm, of slowness. Time doesn't push you here. It nudges gently. And for the first time today, you don't feel like a total imposter. Of course, that's when someone shouts your name. Well, the version of your name they've decided fits you best, and you realize you've been assigned your next duty: weaving, because obviously your soft, undertrained fingers are totally ready for that. You approach the weaving area with cautious optimism. After all, how hard could it be? Thread goes in, fabric comes out. Like a printer, but without electricity, and definitely with more judgmental staring. You're guided to a simple loom under a canopy of reeds. It looks deceptively basic, just wooden beams, string, and a foot pedal. But when a young woman demonstrates how it works, her hands fly through the motions like she was born threading warp and weft. You try to follow. She's kind, patient, and probably wondering if you're secretly pranking her with how clumsy you are. This loom, you quickly learn, is part of a domestic tradition that goes back thousands of years. India wasn't just making cloth, it was dominating the textile game. Ancient Indian cotton was famous across the known world. Greek traders, Roman senators, and even Chinese nobility coveted this fine, breathable fabric. You're sitting in the very heart of a legacy that would one day shape global trade routes. But first, you have to figure out how not to snap the thread every 5 seconds. You push the shuttle through the warp threads. You beat the weft down gently with the comb-like frame. You press the foot pedal, switch the alignment, and start again. That's the rhythm. Shuttle. Beat. Pedal. Breathe. It's oddly satisfying once you stop tying your fingers in knots. Around you, others are working on more advanced projects. Brightly dyed threads hang like garlands indigo blues, turmeric yellows, madder reds. Some are spinning raw cotton into thread using drop spindles, twisting fibers by hand while gossiping softly. It's not just labor, it's community. People are catching up on news, sharing recipes, whispering about who's marrying whom. And here you are, struggling to make a dishcloth. Still, there's a strange beauty in this struggle. You're learning with your body, not your brain. There's no undo button. Just repetition, failure, and eventual progress. One older man chuckles softly as he watches you. He points to your mess of a fabric square and says something you don't understand, but you catch the gist from his grin. It's probably something like, "Don't quit your day job." Joke's on him, you don't have a day job here. Mainstream historical fact time. The Indian subcontinent was one of the first places in the world to domesticate cotton dating, as far back as 5000 BCE in the Indus Valley Civilization. Those ancient folks had sophisticated spindle whorls, dyeing techniques, and, yes, even early looms. Your awkward knot of yarn is standing on the shoulders of a very tall, very skilled textile tradition, quirky tidbit. Some threads were spun so fine in certain regions like Dhaka muslin that they were called woven air. 1 square yard of this gossamer fabric could pass through a ring. Royals wore layers upon layers of it to show off their wealth, even if it made them look vaguely like haunted curtains. You, however, are making something that looks more like a cat toy. Historians still argue whether weaving was primarily a domestic craft done by women or a proto-industry involving professional guilds and specialized workers. Evidence suggests it was both depending on the region and the era. Here in your village, it's clearly a daily skill taught, practiced, shared. But some families take pride in being known as weavers, passing the craft down through generations. The loom isn't just a tool, it's a legacy. You're starting to get the hang of it when your stomach lets out a rather dramatic growl. Someone laughs. A snack break is called. Out comes a little bundle of palm leaves opened like a gift. Inside are roasted chickpeas, puffed rice, and a spicy mix of fried lentils and dried mango slivers. It's crunchy, tangy, and perfect. You try not to inhale it all in one go, but self-control is hard when you've burned roughly 600 calories through sheer incompetence. As you munch, the conversation turns to colors. Natural dyes are a big deal here. Saffron from flowers, indigo from fermented leaves, red from crushed insects, or madder root. One woman shows you her fingers stained a beautiful dark pink. She smiles and says something that probably means worth it. You're told that dyeing day is coming soon. The whole village will participate. That's how things work here. Everyone contributes to everything. Your modern specialist mindset doesn't apply. You're not a weaver or a cook or a potter. You're a human being. You adapt. You learn. You also sweat profusely. The afternoon sun filters through the weaving canopy, painting everything gold. Threads shimmer. Children nap nearby. A flute plays somewhere in the distance, dreamy and slow. You pause hands still on the loom and let the moment wash over you. Then a small child runs past and trips over your unfinished cloth. Your work tears. You sigh. No one blames the child. They just nod and hand you a new warp thread. Begin again. Weaving here isn't just an act of making fabric, it's a metaphor for the entire society. Threads interlaced with care, creating something stronger than any single strand. You're not good at it yet, but you're part of it. And maybe that's enough. A few hours later, your eyes heavy and your fingers sore, you're released from weaving duty. Your cloth, slightly lopsided, oddly tight in some places and loose in others, is rolled up and handed to you like a badge of honor. It's not pretty, but it's yours. You walk home slowly, feeling the weight of the day settling in your bones. The village glows in the late afternoon light. Smoke curls lazily from cooking fires. The goat is, of course, waiting for you at your door like an old roommate who never pays rent. You sit down, close your eyes, and hear someone say, "Bath time." Oh no, bath time. 2 words you never expected to fear. But here in ancient India, it's less candles and bubbles and more ritual and cold water. You're ushered toward the communal bathing area, which thankfully is modestly separated by woven mats and shrubbery. Privacy is a flexible concept, and you're learning to be okay with that. Kind of. Water is drawn from a nearby well, its stone rim slick from centuries of use. A young boy lowers the bucket muscles straining as he hoists it up and dumps the cool liquid into a large clay basin. You dip a toe in. Instant regret. It's icy, like mountain stream icy. A middle-aged man with a generous smile hands you a piece of rough cloth and a small dish of grayish paste. He gestures, and you realize this is your soap. It smells earthy and sharp. You later learn it's a mix of ash lentil powder and dried herbs, completely biodegradable, surprisingly effective and mildly exfoliating to the point of sandblasting. You strip down modestly and step in. The cold hits you like a moral judgment. You inhale sharply. A chorus of chuckles erupts from nearby. Welcome to the ancient Indian bathing experience where there's no warm faucet, no fluffy towel, and definitely no cucumber melon-scented body wash. Still, this isn't just about hygiene. It's about purification, physically, spiritually, socially. In Vedic culture, bathing wasn't optional. It was essential, a sacred act to prepare the body and mind for daily duties, prayers, or even meals. Water wasn't just for cleaning. It reset your soul. Mainstream historical fact. The ancient Indians were serious about cleanliness. The Indus Valley Civilization, dating back to 2500 BCE, had some of the world's earliest urban sanitation systems, complete with private baths, drainage channels, and even public great baths used for ritual purposes. You're not just splashing around, you're participating in a multi-millennia obsession with staying fresh. As you scrub, you hear soft chants from the nearby temple. A group is performing their morning puja, their offerings arranged with care, marigold flowers, coconut halves, a flickering oil lamp. You wonder if your awkward bath counts as a form of devotion. Honestly, it should. Quirky tidbit. Some people used to believe that washing in specific rivers like the Ganges could cleanse not just your sins but those of your ancestors too. Imagine your daily shower absolving your great-great-grand-uncle's tax fraud. That's some impressive water pressure. Historians still argue whether daily bathing was a universal custom or one more common among certain castes, regions, or religious groups. Climate obviously played a role when it's sweltering 90% of the year. Rinsing off isn't just ritual, it's survival. But the fact remains, compared to many ancient societies, Indians were way ahead of the hygiene curve. You finish rinsing with a metal jug, letting the water cascade from your shoulders like a budget waterfall. The cloth does its job, though your skin now feels like it's been gently polished with gravel. You pat yourself dry with a sun-warmed cotton towel and wrap the clean dhoti someone thoughtfully left out for you. It's soft, loosely woven, and oddly freeing, like wearing a cloud with an identity crisis. Then comes the hair care. You're handed a small pouch of shikakai powder, a natural cleanser made from dried acacia pods. You mix it with water, massage it into your scalp, and rinse. It lathers, slightly smells like a spice rack, and leaves your hair feeling pretty fantastic, actually. You kind of get the hype. A young girl offers you oil coconut infused with jasmine and helps you apply it to your scalp. It's soothing, slightly ticklish, and smells better than any shampoo aisle in the modern world. You'll be greasier than a dosa, but hey, moisturized. Clean and glowing, you return to your hut. The goat, ever your judgmental roommate, gives you a once-over and approves. You flop down for a moment, letting the midday heat sink into your bones. Your skin tingles from the scrub. Your muscles are heavy from the work. You've never been this exhausted. or this clean. But rest is not on the menu, because now it's temple time. Someone knocks gently and hands you a garland of marigolds. It's fragrant and surprisingly heavy. You're gently urged toward the village temple, a simple stone structure decorated with colorful chalk patterns and fresh flowers. Bells chime softly in the breeze. Incense swirls in lazy spirals. You enter barefoot, stepping over the cool threshold, and instantly feel a shift. The air changes. Quieter. Still. Inside, a small idol is being adorned with cloth and smeared with sandalwood paste. The priest chants softly, offering fruits, sweets, and flame. The ritual is mesmerizing, part theater, part meditation. You kneel unsure of the steps, but mimic the others' palms together, slight bow eyes lowered. It's calming, even comforting. Mainstream religion at work, sure, but there's something very personal here too. Devotion isn't shouted. It's whispered, folded into daily acts, lighting a lamp, sharing food, touching a forehead to the earth. As you sit, a tiny toddler waddles up and places a flower in your hand. Just like that, you're part of the prayer. No big moment, no ceremony. Just inclusion, quiet and beautiful. And here's your scholarly debate for the evening. Historians still argue whether the highly structured Vedic rituals seen in texts like the Rig Veda were everyday events for common people or primarily reserved for the elite priestly classes. What you're witnessing feels deeply communal, fluid, adaptable. Less about rigid rules, more about shared meaning. The ceremony ends with a shared sweet jaggery and coconut rolled into balls. You're handed one, warm and sticky. It melts on your tongue with rich, smoky sweetness. You offer thanks even though you're not sure to whom. Gratitude seems safe. You step outside into the twilight. The village glows under a rising moon. Fires are being lit for dinner. Laughter echoes from the cooking huts. The flute is back now, slower, sleepier. Even the goat seems serene. You freshly bathed and inexplicably peaceful walk back slowly. The clay underfoot is cool. The garland still smells faintly of spice and sun. You crawl into your hut, lie back, and sigh. Of course, that's when someone taps your shoulder. Time to grind grain, they say cheerfully, because obviously after spiritual cleansing comes manual labor, grain grinding. You were hoping for a nap or maybe a quiet moonlit snack, but no, there's always one more task. And this one involves a heavy stone, a lot of repetition, and your soon-to-be very sore shoulders. You're led to a small open courtyard lit by flickering oil lamps. A couple of women sit cross-legged on the ground, already deep in the rhythm of grinding. In front of them is a simple device, two heavy circular stones stacked like an ancient Oreo. The top one spins with a wooden handle. The bottom stays put. Between them, grains millet barley, or maybe some ancient form of wheat. You're handed your own setup. It looks harmless until you try to turn it. Your first spin barely moves the top stone. Someone snickers gently and nudges your elbow with a practiced motion. The trick, you realize, is in the momentum push just right, and let gravity do half the work. Still, your arms burn within minutes. Ancient carb loading, it turns out, required a full upper body workout. Mainstream historical fact, by the time of the Vedic period and beyond, grinding grain at home was a daily necessity in nearly every Indian household. There were no prepackaged rotis, no rice cookers, no just add water convenience. Every single meal started at the millstone. It was laborious, yes, but also deeply tied to cultural rituals. Some families even recited prayers while grinding, asking for prosperity, health, or just a less stubborn piece of equipment. As the stone turns, the grain slowly transforms. What started as dry, dusty kernels becomes a soft, warm flour with the smell of something ancient and essential. You're oddly proud of this progress. Covered in sweat and a little flour dust, yes, but proud. You pause to wipe your brow, and someone hands you a small clay cup of buttermilk. It's tangy, cool, and slightly salty, a perfect recovery drink, ancient electrolyte style. You sip, slowly, grateful. Then return to grinding. Because the night's meal depends on it. Quirky tidbit. In some regions of ancient India, women sang grinding songs, melodies passed down for generations, each with its own rhythm to match the stone's rotation. Some were lullabies. Others were gossip set to tune. A few were thinly veiled rants about lazy husbands. Tonight, the women near you are humming softly, and you swear one of them winks when the tune shifts into something vaguely mischievous. Historians still argue whether communal grain grinding was a bonding ritual among women or simply a necessity that turned social out of sheer repetition. But here, in the lamplit courtyard, it feels like both. There's laughter, yes, but also an unspoken understanding this is life. Shared, repetitive, and sacred in its own exhausting way. Once your flour is deemed acceptable, not good, just passable, you're invited into the cooking hut. The air is thick with smoke and spice. The fire crackles. A flat stone slab serves as the griddle. A woman scoops up your flour, adds a little water salt, maybe some crushed fennel, and kneads it into dough with lightning-fast hands. She pinches off a piece, rolls it with a smooth stone pin, and slaps it onto the hot slab. You watch as it puffs slightly, turning golden with little brown spots. Someone adds a spoonful of ghee, and the smell is so divine it deserves its own hymn. Dinner is served on a banana leaf. Your roti not too misshapen miraculously. A lentil stew seasoned with cumin and asafoetida, a little pickle made from lime and mustard seeds, and a piece of roasted yam. There's no cutlery, just your hands, and the soft, terrible bread. You eat slowly, carefully. The food is warm and spiced and incredibly satisfying. It's not hot in the burn-your-tongue way, but complex aromatic. Each bite is layered with things you can't quite name. This isn't survival food. This is generational mastery. Halfway through your meal, someone slides over a tiny dish of sweetened rice with cardamom and coconut. Dessert. You've earned it. Barely. Once everyone's eaten, there's no dramatic cleanup. Leftovers go to the animals' banana leaves, return to the earth, and the dishes, metal or clay, are rinsed at the well. You help, of course, your fingers wrinkled and sore, your arms now fully aware of the day's labor. The village begins to quiet. People stretch out under the stars. Some retreat to huts. Others roll out mats under the open sky. There are no street lights, no buzz of appliances, no blue screens glowing in the dark. Just crickets, soft snoring, and the occasional goat sigh. You finally settle into your hut, curled up on a straw mat. It's thin, but somehow more comfortable than your memory foam mattress back home. Maybe it's the fatigue. Maybe it's the satisfaction of having done things. Hard, simple, ancient things. You reflect on the grinding stone, the weight of it, the rhythm. It's not just about making food. It's about making time. turning the world slowly with your own hands. There's no shortcut, no quick fix, just you, the grain, and the grind. And just as you're drifting off, you hear the flute again, that same gentle melody from earlier in the day. It floats on the breeze like a lullaby for the earth itself, a reminder that even in a world of effort and repetition, there's still music, still beauty, still moments that soften the edges. You fall asleep with flour under your nails, smoke in your hair, and a roti-shaped sense of accomplishment in your chest. Of course, your sleep doesn't last long, because before the sun is even up, someone is shaking your shoulder. There's a twinkle in their eye. Time to tend the animals, they say, far too cheerfully. And you groan, because you just learned how to make bread. And now you have to meet the buffalo. You awake to a snort, not from a human, not from the goat he's still asleep curled into a suspiciously smug ball of fluff. No, this is deeper, wetter, more bovine. You crack one eye open and come face to face with a buffalo. She's massive. Her horns curve like crescent moons, and her eyes have seen things long rainy seasons, births, famines, and probably at least 3 clueless city dwellers trying to figure out how milking works. You're about to become number 4. Come, your host says, handing you a wooden pail and a sense of misplaced confidence. She's gentle. That may be true, but she's also the size of a compact car, and currently relieving herself with the relaxed precision of a creature who knows no shame. You inch closer. She flicks her ear. You flinch. Your first attempt at milking is moist, warm, a little humiliating. You tug too hard, then too soft, then somehow spray yourself in the face. The children nearby erupt into laughter. The buffalo doesn't even blink. Clearly, you're not the first rookie she's seen. Mainstream historical fact, domesticated water buffalo were essential to agrarian life in ancient India. Not just for milk, which was churned into yogurt, ghee, and buttermilk, but also for plowing fields and serving as living lawnmowers. Cows were considered sacred, yes, but buffalo. They were the working-class heroes, strong, adaptable, and deeply entwined in daily survival. Eventually, someone gently takes over the milking. The rhythmic squish-squish sound is oddly soothing. The milk once collected is boiled with ginger and turmeric, part preservation, part prebiotic wizardry, and you're handed a cup. It's sweet-rich, and somehow tastes like forgiveness. Next comes feeding time. You help toss handfuls of chopped greens and grain into troughs. The animals line up in sleepy gratitude, more buffalo, a few goats, some restless chickens. One of them pecks at your sandal. You jump. She pecks again. A silent challenge. You retreat. Quirky tidbit, some ancient Indian texts describe cows and buffalo, not just as economic assets, but as status symbols. The wealth of a person could be counted in hooves. Even gods were associated with cows. Krishna, for example, was a divine cowherd. And you're a slightly underqualified intern in this ancient barnyard. Historians still argue whether dairy consumption was widespread across castes or mainly reserved for certain social strata. Some evidence suggests dairy was a staple, while other sources hint that access to ghee and curd might have reflected your place in the hierarchy. Here, though, it seems everyone from baby to elder gets their fair share of creamy goodness. With the animals fed and slightly less judgmental of your presence, you're whisked off to the fields. The sun is only beginning to rise, but the day is already warm. Birds trill from tree branches. Monkeys chatter in the distance. You pass by a rice paddy, its water glinting pink in the early light, and step into a plot where planting is underway. Barefoot, of course. Shoes would be laughably impractical in this muck. You squish into the field behind an elderly man who moves with surprising grace. He shows you how to scatter seeds with a flick of the wrist, quick, precise, hopeful. The earth is soft and spongy, the smell rich with life. You try the motion, and your seeds mostly clump into one sad pile. The man chuckles and gently redirects your aim. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Indian agriculture was sophisticated and varied. From dryland millet to monsoon-fed rice, the subcontinent's farmers had long mastered crop rotation irrigation systems and seasonal timing. Texts like the Arthashastra even offer detailed agricultural manuals, basically ancient farmers' almanacs. Your job is simple plant, pat, move. Repeat. It's almost meditative except for the persistent mosquito interest in your ankles and the ever-growing ache in your lower back. You realize how long a day really is when you're measuring it by handfuls of seed. There's no tractor, no scythe, just tools made of wood and your very confused muscles. You pause to wipe your forehead, and someone hands you a palmful of roasted chickpeas. Crunchy, salty, sustaining. A snack, but also a reminder that in this world food and work are always intertwined. You eat, then return to planting. The rhythm begins to make sense. Quirky tidbit, in some regions, farmers used to sing to their crops, soft chants believed to encourage growth. Not for the plants, necessarily, but to pace their work and soothe their minds. One woman hums a tune as she works beside you, and you hum along off-key but sincere. Historians still debate the exact crop diversity in each region of ancient India, and how early trade influenced agriculture. Black pepper, turmeric, and cardamom were already being cultivated here. Spices that would someday travel the world. But even in these small fields, the humble lentil reigns supreme. It's nutritious, adaptable, and likely the thing you'll be eating again for dinner. By mid-morning, you're sunburnt, mosquito-bitten, and convinced that every muscle in your body has filed a formal complaint. Still, when the field is finished, there's a quiet sense of victory. You helped plant food. For real. With your hands. You squelch your way back toward the village, feet caked in mud, and pass a group of children chasing each other with sticks. They wave. You wave back, too tired to manage more than a floppy hand flail. Someone calls you over for another rinse this time, at a shaded corner of the stream where water flows gently over stones. It's cool, clear, and perfect for scrubbing off the morning's efforts. You rinse your feet, your arms, your soul. As you sit on a rock drying in the sun, you realize just how much of your life back home is filtered, optimized, softened. Here, everything touches you directly. Earth, water, heat, fatigue. There's no insulation from reality. And somehow that's its own kind of comfort. You're offered a midday meal again, leftovers folded into a warm roti, and handed to you like a reward. You eat under a neem tree, the shade speckling your arms and face like lace. Then it happens you yawn, a long, jaw-cracking, bone-deep yawn. Someone laughs and points you toward a woven mat. Rest, now they say, before the next job. You lie back, belly full head, buzzing with half-formed memories of buffalo eyes and rice seeds. Sleep comes quickly. Just before you drift off, you hear someone whisper nearby. Don't forget, we're weaving cloth this afternoon. Of course you are, because you're still not done surviving ancient India. You wake up to the soft rasp of threads being pulled tight, the whispery squeak of wooden parts shifting, and a gentle thump, thump, thump. No alarm clock, no snooze button, just the call of the loom. Still a little dazed, you sit up and follow the sound. Around the corner, under a shaded awning, a group of women and a few older men are seated on low stools, their hands a blur of motion. Wooden looms, intricate, ancient contraptions click and creak, like mellow percussion instruments. And their stretched taut between pegs is the beginning of cloth. Today, you're going to help make fabric. Yup. The very thing you used to take for granted every time you threw on a hoodie or flicked through a rack at the mall. Not anymore. One of the weavers waves you over with a smile that says, "Prepare to be humbled." You're introduced to the simplest job, first spinning. It sounds like fun until you realize it involves a hand spindle, some cotton fluff, and an unbelievable amount of patience. You're handed a wad of soft, cotton fluffy and clingy like a dandelion that exploded. Mainstream historical fact. India has a long and legendary relationship with cotton. In fact, it's one of the earliest places in the world where cotton was not only cultivated, but spun and woven into cloth even as far back as the Indus Valley civilization. By the time you're stumbling through your ancient day, cotton is king, and Indian textiles are already famous across trade routes that stretch as far as Rome and China. You roll the spindle between your fingers, trying to twist the fiber into thread. It's like trying to turn the clouds into rope. The thread snaps. Again. And again. Eventually, you produce something that technically counts as string, although it's more aggressively lumpy than elegantly fine. A nearby elder takes a look and chuckles. "Good for tying goats," he says. You beam unsure if that's a compliment. Quirky tidbit, in some parts of ancient India, especially in rural or tribal communities, people believed the act of spinning had spiritual merit. Each rotation of the spindle was a kind of meditation, a way to calm the mind and honor the cycles of nature. In fact, many villages had spinning songs, slow looping lullabies to pass the time and pace the work. You hum along, half imagining your modern anxieties slowly unspooling with every rotation. Historians still argue whether early Indian textile practices were primarily household-based or centralized under guild-like structures. Some evidence suggests that whole families would contribute to cloth production, while other theories propose that specialized artisans took over more complex stages of the process. Either way, you're starting at the absolute bottom of the loom ladder. Once your thread is grudgingly accepted, you graduate to helping prepare the loom. This involves threading the warp, long vertical threads that will form the backbone of the cloth. It's like setting up a harp made entirely of lint. Each thread must go through a specific hole in a wooden frame called a heddle. Miss a hole, and your pattern gets wrecked. You miss several holes. Quickly, someone redoes it for you with the smooth efficiency of a person who's probably been threading looms since before they could walk. You watch, trying to absorb the rhythm, the hand movements, the subtle adjustments. It's hypnotic, like watching someone play a silent piano that makes fabric instead of music. Then comes the fun part, the weft. This is where you actually weave, passing a shuttle with thread over and under the warp strings, then thumping the beater to tighten it into cloth. Over, under, then thump. It's satisfying, meditative, and weirdly addictive. You manage a few inches of uneven, twitchy-looking fabric. It's mostly intact. Mostly. A child runs over and strokes it gently. "Nice," she says with the enthusiasm only a 6-year-old can muster. You don't correct her. Someone nearby is dyeing thread. You wander over and watch as they stir bundles of yarn into vats of deep indigo turmeric yellow and a dusky red made from madder root. No synthetic dyes here, just plants' minerals and centuries of trial and error. They explain how some colors are considered auspicious. Red for marriage, white for mourning, yellow for spring, and indigo reserved for special patterns and high-value exports. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Indian textiles were highly prized across the ancient world, not just for their beauty, but for their technical sophistication. Techniques like block printing, tie-dye, known locally as bandhani, and even early resist dyeing were already in use. India's cotton exports were so coveted that they even inspired imitations in Europe centuries later. Quirky fact. In some cases, cloth wasn't just used for clothing or decor, it was used as currency. Elaborate patterns, fine thread counts, and certain dyes increased value. You weren't just making a shirt. You were potentially spinning your own paycheck. As the afternoon heat deepens, the weaving slows. People rest their hands, stretch their fingers, sip cool drinks made from tamarind and jaggery. Someone passes you a handful of puffed rice, and it crunches softly between your teeth. Sweet, airy, perfect. You sit back and admire the half-finished cloth. It's not perfect, okay? It's a little wonky, but it exists. A thing made with your own tired hands. And in this world, that's the point. Everything here takes time. Everything has weight. You look down at your dusty fingers speckled with dye, smelling faintly of cotton and smoke. You've made food. You've planted grain. You've woven a piece of cloth, however small. And then, just as you're beginning to enjoy this moment of minor triumph, someone taps you on the shoulder. "We need to repair the roof before sunset," they say. You blink. Roof. What roof? Yours, apparently. Or at least the communal one you've been generously offered in exchange for your enthusiastic but mostly mediocre labor. Monsoon season is around the corner, and it's your turn to haul thatch and mud. Because in ancient India, even your nap has to earn its keep. The thatch bundle is heavier than it looks. You hoist it over your shoulder like a heroic villager in a sepia-toned movie scene. But instead of cinematic glory, you get straw in your mouth and a serious appreciation for upper body strength. Your biceps are filing another complaint. Honestly, at this point your entire nervous system has started a union. The roof repair squad is already in motion by the time you shuffle over. Several villagers are perched along the sloping thatch edge legs, dangling with casual ease, chatting while their hands move like clockwork. They make roof patching look like afternoon tea. You, however, struggle just to climb the ladder without slipping into oblivion. You're not afraid of heights per se, but you are deeply suspicious of them. Mainstream historical fact in many regions of ancient India, especially in agrarian villages, homes were built from mud, bamboo stone, or a mix of all three, whatever was locally available. The roofs, thatch, clay tiles, or sometimes layered palm fronds depending on the season and the region's resources. Thatch was cheap, breathable, and relatively easy to replace, unless you were you. Balancing on the beams, you shuffle cautiously toward the patch that's leaking. It's a minor drip now, but with monsoon clouds looming on the horizon, it might as well be a ticking time bomb. You hand someone the new thatch, and they begin expertly tucking it between older layers, binding it down with coir rope. You attempt to mimic them, and immediately poke a hole through the patch you were trying to fix. Oops, don't worry, someone says, kindly taking over. Rain likes to test everyone. Below, a few kids are chasing each other with what looks like a dried mango seed on a string. You briefly envy their freedom before remembering that this is their norm. You're the weird one here. The guest who can't even tie a roof without breaking a sweat. Quirky tidbit, some ancient Indian communities added cow dung and mud paste to roof layers, not just as filler, but as an insect repellent. It's antiseptic, thermally insulating, and if you squint hard enough, eco-chic. In your world, it's called bioarchitecture. Here, it's just called common sense. Historians still argue whether seasonal housing modifications were organized communally or carried out independently by each household. Some archaeological evidence points to collective housing efforts during the monsoon season, while other records suggest individual maintenance based on status, wealth, and family size. Either way, right now you're in a team activity whether you like it or not. You're handed a fresh batch of binding fiber strips of dried banana leaf that you twist into rough cords. The work is repetitive, the motion steady, and somehow, despite the soreness, it starts to feel okay, like a rhythm, like your body remembering something it never actually learned. And just when you're in the groove, you drop your bundle off the roof. You both watch it fall in silence. It lands in the water trough with a spectacular splash. There's a moment of quiet. Then, laughter yours included. No one's angry. Mistakes are part of the process. And let's be real, you weren't going to single-handedly save the structural integrity of this roof anyway. Eventually, you descend with only minor bruises and a few bits of straw permanently tangled in your hair. You stretch your aching arms and admire the patch job from below. It's not pretty, but it'll hold. Hopefully. Probably. Maybe. You're ushered toward a new task before you can collapse into a nap making fuel. But not the fun modern kind. No gasoline. No propane. No gentle flick of a lighter. Today, your fuel is dung. Dried shaped and stored in neat stacks like the world's least appetizing pancakes. Mainstream historical fact, dried cow dung was, and still is in many rural areas, a primary source of fuel for cooking fires. Mixed with straw or husk, and left to sun-dry, it burns slow and steady with a surprisingly neutral scent once fully cured. You kneel beside a low wall where fresh patties are drying. A woman shows you how to slap the mixture into discs, then press it gently against a warm stone wall to bake in the sun. It's oddly satisfying, like pottery, but squishier. Quirky fact, some regions even decorated the dung cakes with symbols or spiral patterns believing that it brought good luck, or at least kept flies uninterested. You try making a little sun swirl. It ends up looking like a very confused snail. You leave it anyway. Historians still debate the timeline of fuel transitions in ancient India, whether dung remained dominant or gave way to wood and charcoal as trade expanded. Either way, in villages like this, fuel isn't just energy, it's economy, culture, and necessity. You step back to admire a towering stack of dried patties neatly arranged like bricks. There's a weird pride in it. A reminder that survival isn't always about glory. Sometimes it's about doing the weird, necessary stuff without complaining. Mostly, your final errand before sunset is hauling water, because of course it is. You walk with a group to the nearest well, balancing a clay pot on your hip, while children race past carrying half their weight in brass vessels like it's a casual Tuesday. Which it is. The well is deep and cool, ringed in stone and shaded by neem trees. A pulley system creaks as someone hauls the first bucket up. You take a turn, hands wrapped around the rope legs, braced. The bucket ascends slowly, heavy with liquid silver. Mainstream historical fact, water access was a deeply organized system in ancient India. Wells tanks, canals, and step wells were engineered with precision, some even designed to harvest monsoon runoff. The city of Mohenjo-Daro had public baths and drainage systems that rivaled later civilizations. You pour the water carefully into your pot, trying not to slosh. It's cool, weighty, real. You carry it back like a newborn arm's trembling spine, straight pace absurdly slow. And then you stumble, just a little. Enough to spill a third of it. Enough to draw a sympathetic wince from a passing elder, but still enough left to cook with. You did it. Not gracefully, not efficiently, but honestly. Back at the home, the last golden sliver of sun melts behind the horizon. The roof holds. The water's boiling. Someone passes you a bowl of rice and greens, warm and soft and perfect. You eat in silence, watching smoke drift upward into the indigo sky. One day. You made it through one day. You're not dead. You're just really, really tired. And tomorrow, you're supposed to learn how to grind grain. You wake up to a sound that can only be described as stone, dragging against more stone. It's rhythmic, deliberate, and oddly comforting until you remember what it means. Today is grain grinding day. You roll out of your modest bedding a woven mat over packed earth. By the way, no memory foam. Here, stretch your sore limbs and make your way outside where the millstones await. And not the giant wind-powered ones you see in cartoons either. No. These are hand-operated circular stones. One flat, one donut-shaped set in pairs. Your job. Feed soaked grain into the center and turn the top stone in endless circles until it breaks down into flour. Or porridge. Or something vaguely edible, depending on your stamina. Mainstream historical fact in ancient India, grain grinding was typically done using querns, manually operated millstones made from basalt or sandstone. Women often took charge of this daily ritual, grinding wheat, barley millet, or rice before each meal. It wasn't just food prep. It was exercise, meditation, and sometimes community bonding. You squat beside the quern, and someone hands you a bowl of millet. The grains are firm, slightly damp, and smell faintly nutty. You pour a scoop into the center hole and place your palms on the top stone. It's heavier than expected, and as you begin to rotate it, your arms instantly scream. Grinding grain is like slow-motion arm wrestling against a rock. You manage one full rotation, just one. The woman beside you is already halfway through her second batch. She smiles gently. Keep going. You'll feel it in your core. You do. Oh, you definitely do. Quirky tidbit in some regions of ancient India, especially in Tamil Nadu and Maharashtra. Women would sing grinding songs, Ural Patu tunes designed to keep rhythm and pass the time. The lyrics often ranged from devotionals to cheeky local gossip. You hum along as someone starts a song about a mischievous cow that refuses to be milked. You almost forget how hard the grinding is. Almost. Eventually, with a fine sheen of sweat on your forehead and arms like overcooked noodles, you scrape the newly ground flour into a bowl. It's coarse, uneven, but technically edible. You're congratulated like a toddler who just learned to walk. Enough for a pancake, someone says. You're delighted, until they clarify one very small pancake. Historians still argue whether ancient Indian communities separated grain processing tasks strictly by gender or shared them based on necessity. Some suggest communal grinding stones were a social hub for women, while others believe work was divided more fluidly during festivals, harvest seasons, or famines. Your next task is more delicate sifting. You're handed a woven bamboo sieve and shown how to swirl the flour gently to separate out husks or pebbles. It's basically a wrist workout with the stakes of dental injury if you miss a stone. Tiny clouds of flour puff into your face as you sift. Your eyebrows now look powdered, which is kind of on trend if you squint. Someone offers you a cloth mask, which is made from the very cotton you failed to spin 2 sections ago. Full circle, baby. After all this, the grain needs cooking. And, while you've graduated from grinding peasant to awkward helper, you're still not allowed near the hearth unsupervised. Fire is a precious resource, and you're not exactly known for your grace under pressure. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Indian cooking was typically done on a chulha, a clay or stone hearth fueled by wood charcoal or dried dung cakes. Flatbreads like roti and bakri were made daily alongside simple stews, lentils, and vegetables, flavored with spices like turmeric, cumin, mustard seed, and fresh curry leaves. You're invited to knead the dough, and oh boy, it's not as easy as the bread-making videos made it look. The flour sticks to your hands like guilt. You add water. Too much. Then more flour. Too dry. It's an endless back-and-forth dance until you somehow arrive at a pliable, doughy compromise. Shaping the bread is even trickier. You're aiming for circles. You end up with organic interpretations of circles. You place your first misshapen flatbread on the hot tava pan, watching it bubble and puff like magic. There's something ancient and holy about this moment until you flip it too early and it deflates like a sad balloon. A little girl nearby laughs. It's a moon roti, she says, lumpy like the sky. You take it as a compliment. As the breads finish cooking, they're slathered with a dab of homemade ghee, a clarified butter made from boiled cow's milk. You've never smelled anything so rich, nutty, and soul-hugging. Even the slightly burnt edges taste divine. Quirky tidbit, in many parts of ancient India, the act of offering the first roti to a cow or a guest was seen as a gesture of hospitality and good karma. In fact, some still do it today, considering it a blessing to share food before eating. You're handed your own moon-shaped roti, paired with a lentil stew spiced with mustard seeds, asafoetida, and a hint of chili. It's hot, it's hearty, and it hits like a warm hug from history. Historians still debate whether meals in ancient India were eaten sitting cross-legged in quiet reverence, or accompanied by communal chatter and music. Based on the scene in front of you, people chatting, passing bowls, humming songs, you lean toward the latter. You eat slowly, every bite a triumph of your aching muscles and newfound patience. Then someone taps your shoulder. Again. Can you help churn the buttermilk now? You blink. Buttermilk. Oh no, you forgot. The meal is just the halfway point. You're led to a tall earthen pot with a long stick protruding from it. Inside, curdled milk. Your job is to churn it until the whey separates from the butter. It's like plunging a broom handle into the thickest milkshake imaginable. The motion is up and down, twist and push. It sloshes loudly. You get splashed. You laugh. You cry. Your arms resign in protest. Mainstream historical fact dairy was a cornerstone of ancient Indian diets, especially among agrarian and pastoral communities. Curd ghee and buttermilk featured heavily in both daily meals and religious rituals. Cows weren't just animals. They were wealth nourishment and often revered. After what feels like a month but was probably 15 minutes, the butter rises like a pale cloud on the surface. You scoop it out proud. You didn't think you'd get this far today. Quirky tidbit, some communities would hang butter from tree branches to bless it under moonlight before using it in special dishes. You imagine your butter swinging from a neem tree like a dairy disco ball. Sacred and a little silly. You sit down on a flat stone bowl of freshly churned buttermilk in hand. It's tangy, cool, and refreshing. The breeze has picked up. Somewhere in the distance a flute plays. You close your eyes. You're not just surviving. You're, dare you say it, kind of thriving. Until someone mutters the word laundry. You sigh. The soap is ash and clay. The scrubber is a rock, and your only towel is still damp from yesterday. Your dreams of basking in post-churned glory are quickly replaced by the grim reality of laundry ancient Indian edition. No fabric softener, no spin cycle, no cheat day. Just you, a pile of very lived-in clothes, and a riverbank with smooth scrubbing stones that look suspiciously like they've ruined many fingernails before yours. You drag yourself to the water's edge, arms still rubbery from your romantic affair with the butter churn. The other villagers are already there, bending, slapping, scrubbing, and wringing like it's a choreographed workout video, but with less lycra and more river mud. Mainstream historical fact in ancient India laundry was commonly done in rivers, ponds, or communal washing areas. Water from tanks, kuns, and stepwells baolis was often reserved for drinking and ritual, while the broader riverways served domestic needs. Clothes were beaten against large, flat stones to loosen grime, vigorous, yes, but surprisingly effective. You kneel beside a particularly inviting stone slab and get to work. Someone hands you a small pouch filled with ash and powdered dried soap nuts, your makeshift detergent. It smells cleanish, sort of nutty, slightly acidic. Like if vinegar married an herb garden. You dip your tunic into the cool current, wring it out, sprinkle some of the ash mixture on the worst bits, then begin scrubbing. And slapping. Then more scrubbing. And then comes the wringing. You twist with all your might, arms trembling, as the cloth resists like it has something to prove. Water dribbles out in stingy defiance. By the time you're done with one piece, the woman next to you is folding her fourth and humming a lullaby. Quirky tidbit soap nuts or retha weren't just for laundry. People also used them as natural shampoo jewelry polish, and even as a gentle insect repellent. The berries contain saponins, natural foaming agents that lather when agitated in water. You briefly consider pocketing a few for your future zero-waste influencer career. Historians still argue whether certain caste or class groups were designated for laundry work in urban settings, especially in large settlements like Varanasi or Pataliputra. Some suggest that in wealthier homes, dhobies, traditional washerfolk, were employed, while others believe that even nobles occasionally had to get their hands wet when living in rural or semi-nomadic environments. Back at your stone, you're now attempting a rinse and repeat cycle. Your shirt looks cleaner. A little. It also smells more like river than sweat, so you take that as a win. You hang your freshly wrung masterpiece over a low tree branch, watching as it drips like a weeping willow. Then you collapse back onto a boulder, the water lapping at your feet. You could stay here forever, but someone cheerfully informs you that laundry is just the warm-up. You've got pottery duty next. Of course you do. You're escorted to the potter's shed, a shaded lean-to near a mound of soft clay. A squat, foot-powered wheel rests at the center. Nearby, finished pots line a bamboo rack, catching the sun like terracotta soldiers on break. Mainstream historical fact pottery in ancient India dates back to the Neolithic period, with regional styles like the painted gray ware, black and red ware, and northern black polished ware dominating different eras. Pottery was essential not just for storage but for rituals, cooking, and trade. Each shape served a purpose, from grain jars to tiny oil lamps. You kneel beside the potter, who smiles and gestures to the wheel. He slaps a lump of clay onto its center and starts the spin with a practiced foot push. The whole thing begins to whirl, humming like a lazy bee. You watch his hands move, steady, deliberate, coaxing the clay upward like it wants to become a vessel. It's hypnotic. Then he pats the mound and motions for you to try. Gulp. You wet your fingers, place your palms on the clay, and immediately panic as the wheel starts turning. The mound begins to wobble like a frightened jellyfish. You try to center it, but instead it grows sideways, topples, and flops dramatically off the wheel like it's given up on life. The potter grins. First one always does that. You reset. Breathe. Try again. This time you manage to create a small, bowl-shaped thing. A little uneven, maybe. One side higher than the other. But it holds water technically. That's enough. Quirky tidbit, some potters would leave thumbprints on the underside of their vessels, not as mistakes, but as tiny signatures. Archaeologists have found these prints in pottery shards dating back thousands of years. You leave one too, on purpose. Let future researchers wonder who made this wobbly disaster. Historians still debate how centralized pottery production was across ancient Indian settlements. Some argue it was a household craft, while others suggest specialized artisans served entire communities, especially in trade hubs along the Ganges and Indus. Once your bowl is gently added to the drying rack and discreetly placed behind the good ones, you're handed a dry, smooth pot to decorate. The pigment is made from red ochre and charcoal mixed with gum resin. You're given a fine-tipped reed brush and told to paint something spiritual. You draw a wobbly lotus. Then, feeling bold, add a sun. It ends up looking like a mutated starfish, but no one says anything. Bless them. The potter takes it, holds it to the light, and nods once. It's not praise exactly, but it's not ridicule either. As the sun tilts downward, the final task of the day approaches, sweeping the courtyard. You're handed a broom made from stiff grass bound in coconut fiber. It has no handle. You bend at the waist and begin sweeping in long arcing motions, sending dust petals and mystery crumbs flying into a corner pile. Mainstream historical fact cleanliness was and remains deeply ingrained in Indian cultural and religious life. Sweeping courtyards, washing before meals, and maintaining clean thresholds weren't just hygiene rituals, but spiritual ones tied to ideas of purity and balance. A gentle breeze carries the scent of roasted spices and wet clay. Your arms move on autopilot now, back and forth, swish and gather. It's strangely meditative. You think of all the people before you who swept this exact kind of ground, sweeping not just dirt, but the weight of the day. Quirky fact, in some texts it's said that sweeping one's threshold at dawn or dusk invites prosperity and wards off ill fortune. It's also how people used to keep track of time. If the courtyard was dusty, it meant it was time to do something useful. Historians still argue whether sweeping rituals were rooted more in Vedic prescriptions or evolved from practical agrarian customs. Either way, you feel a strange peace as the dust settles. Finally, as the stars begin to prick through the twilight veil, someone lights a small clay lamp like the ones you tried and failed to shape. It flickers beside a doorway, casting a golden halo on the wall. You're invited to place your palms over the flame and then to your forehead a silent act of thanks for surviving another day. And you have, somehow. Bruised, scraped, powdered in flour and clay, but alive. One day in ancient India, a whole day, and tomorrow, you're told it's time to try your luck with Ayurvedic healing. Because apparently those sore muscles, they're just getting started. You wake up sore in places you didn't know existed. Your wrists ache from pottery. Your legs groan from all the squatting. And your back feels like someone folded you in half overnight and forgot to unfold you. So when someone suggests you try some Ayurvedic care, you're more than interested. You're desperate. They lead you to the local healer's home, a quiet mud brick structure nestled near the village banyan tree. Inside, the air is thick with the aroma of herbs, earthy sharp with something like camphor riding the edge of it. You sit on a woven mat and try to look less broken. Mainstream historical fact. Ayurveda, a holistic system of medicine dating back over 3,000 years, was widely practiced across ancient India. Rooted in the concepts of bodily humors, doshas, vata, pitta, kapha. It aimed not just to treat illness, but to maintain balance between body, mind, and environment. Remedies ranged from plant-based medicines to massage fasting, and even surgical procedures. Your healer is an older man with silvered hair and kind eyes. He observes you without speaking. Then he places 2 fingers on your wrist to take your pulse, not just to count beats, but to feel your energy. You raise an eyebrow. He shushes you gently. You're out of alignment, he says, as though that wasn't painfully obvious from your slouch. Vata imbalance. You nod sagely as if you understand what that means. He rummages through a series of leaf-wrapped bundles and clay jars before selecting one that smells strongly of turmeric and fenugreek. He mixes a yellow paste warm and oily and begins to apply it to your arms and shoulders. The massage is firm, borderline brutal, but after the initial shock, something releases in your muscles. You exhale loudly. He smiles. You'll feel like yourself again. Maybe. Quirky tidbit, ancient Ayurvedic texts include treatments for everything from insomnia and snake bites to baldness and broken hearts. Some prescriptions involved gold ash cow urine or boiling herbs under moonlight. You silently hope today's balm isn't made from anything too creative. Historians still argue whether Ayurveda was accessible to all social groups or primarily practiced among the priestly and elite classes. Some evidence suggests local healers adapted Ayurvedic principles for their own communities, blending them with folk knowledge and regional customs. Once your shoulders feel less like wooden planks, the healer hands you a steaming cup of herbal tea. It's brewed with holy basil cardamom and something bitter that makes your eyebrows attempt escape. Good for digestion, he says. You nod, bravely sip, and suppress the urge to gag. Next, you're invited to sit in on a lesson with the healer's apprentice. It turns out Ayurveda isn't all incense and shoulder rubs. It's also about what you eat, how you sleep, and what kind of person you are when the sun sets. They lay out a scroll inked with tidy Sanskrit script, an Ayurvedic guide. You recognize a few symbols. There are drawings of leaves, pressure points, organs, and what looks like someone sneezing dramatically next to a mango. You learn that too much vata air and ether makes you anxious, dry-skinned, and possibly very bad at sleeping. Too much pitta fire and water brings anger heat rashes and a tendency to argue with goats. Kapha earth and water can leave you sluggish, clingy, and overly fond of afternoon naps. You definitely feel vata-ish, floaty, frazzled, and mildly afraid of doing laundry again. You are given a few adjustments to your routine: drink warm water in the morning, eat less raw food, try sesame oil on your feet before bed. You thank them and begin to leave feeling about 12% more aligned than when you arrived. But before you can return to your mat for some much-needed napping, someone tugs your arm. It's time for a ritual bath. Of course it is. Mainstream historical fact ritual cleansing was a vital part of daily life in ancient India, not just for hygiene, but for spiritual purity. Whether before temple visits, meals, or ceremonies, water was considered a sacred purifier. Bathing took place in rivers, lakes, or stepwells, and was often accompanied by prayer or chanting. You're brought to a small stone stepwell, carved stairs descending into a pool of clear, still water. Flower petals float lazily on the surface. It's quiet, serene, almost holy. You begin to strip down to your undercloth with the grace of someone who has bathed in modern privacy their entire life. But no one seems to notice your awkwardness. You step into the water, and it is cold, very, very cold. You inhale sharply as the chill bites into your skin. But slowly your body adjusts. You scoop water over your shoulders, your neck, your face, and let it flow away whatever dust and soreness clings to you. A boy nearby is chanting softly lines from a Vedic hymn. You catch phrases about Light River's renewal. You're not sure what they mean, but the melody wraps around your brain like a lullaby. Quirky tidbit: in some ancient Indian traditions, people would bathe facing east at dawn to absorb the energy of the rising sun, believed to be a living deity. Others swore by post-sunset dips during full moons, claiming it improved memory and made your skin glow. Historians still debate whether everyday ritual bathing was mostly religious, or if it evolved from practical health habits given the tropical climate. Either way, you're beginning to understand the appeal of a daily soak. After drying off with a sun-warmed cloth, blessedly not still damp from laundry day, you feel cleaner, lighter, and surprisingly okay with your lot in life. Back at your mat, you sit cross-legged and let yourself breathe. Your neighbor offers you a few stalks of tulsi and a pinch of jaggery. Sweetens the breath, she says, grinning. You accept it gratefully, chewing slowly, eyes fixed on the dusky sky. And just when you think it's finally time to rest, someone asks if you'd like to help with a small prayer at the household shrine. Because naturally, spiritual maintenance is just as important as physical. You follow them into a corner of the home where a small alcove houses clay statues of deities, a brass bell, and a row of oil lamps. A garland of marigolds hangs above it all, fresh from the market, or perhaps the garden. Mainstream historical fact: household shrines were common across ancient Indian homes, regardless of wealth. Daily offerings, water flowers, incense, or food were made to family deities. These rituals weren't grand or theatrical, but gentle, rhythmic, and deeply personal. You're handed a stick of incense and shown how to wave it in slow circles, then place it in a holder. The smell, sandalwood and clove, wafts upward, like the day itself melting into memory. Someone rings the bell. Soft chanting begins. Your eyes flutter shut. There's no pressure to understand. Just the shared act of stillness, of gratitude. Quirky tidbit, some families would even whisper their dreams to the household deities at night, hoping for symbolic answers. Others tied tiny notes to their shrines with wishes, ailments, or complaints like divine suggestion boxes. Historians still argue whether these personal devotional practices evolved separately from temple-based rituals or were extensions of earlier Vedic fire ceremonies adapted for home life. Either way, you feel something settle in you as the flame flickers low. You survived the food, the fire, the flower, the furnace of expectations. You even learned a little Ayurveda. You're tired, yes, but it's a content kind of tired. The kind that says you've lived this day fully. And tomorrow, they say you'll be helping with a wedding. Oh, you poor exhausted thing. Dawn breaks to the sound of conch shells and distant drumming. You blink awake as a cluster of birds flutters from a nearby neem tree. And for a moment you think maybe there's a festival. Maybe a temple procession. Nope. It's a wedding, and you're helping. Someone thrusts a garland of marigolds into your hands before you've even shaken off sleep. You stumble upright, still smelling faintly of last night's sesame oil, and follow the flurry of activity swirling through the village. Mainstream historical fact. Ancient Indian weddings were elaborate multi-day affairs steeped in Vedic rituals, family alliances, and community gatherings. While formats varied by region, class, and time period, weddings were universally considered sacred samskaras that marked the passage from student life to householder status. Today's bride is young, adorned in red and gold, her hair braided with jasmine. She's surrounded by women singing playful songs, some sweet, some teasing, some surprisingly inappropriate, if you catch the metaphors. You do your best to hum along, but mostly you're assigned flower-stringing duty. Your fingers fumble through strands of thread and fragile petals. A nearby auntie watches your progress, clearly torn between amusement and concern for her floral aesthetic. You eventually get the hang of it. Sort of. Your garland is less symmetrical, more interpretive. Meanwhile, someone is painting the groom's feet with turmeric paste, a golden yellow, so bright it looks radioactive. He's grinning through the whole ordeal, which seems to involve equal parts blessing and embarrassment. Quirky tidbit, in some ancient Indian wedding customs, the bride's female relatives would steal the groom's sandals during a ritual bath, demanding gifts or bribes for their return. It was meant to lighten the mood and start the marriage with laughter. You briefly consider starting a sandal smuggling ring, but think better of it. The air fills with the scent of rosewater and sandalwood smoke. An altar is assembled from banana leaves, clay lamps, and fruit offerings. You're handed a tray of rice and asked to scatter it in a spiral pattern around the fire pit. You do, terribly. Historians still argue whether early Vedic marriage ceremonies were strictly religious or had political underpinnings. Some say they were mostly symbolic acts of union, while others note that marriages, especially among the elite, often solidified alliances, property transfers, and even peace treaties. As the ceremony begins, everyone gathers under a makeshift canopy of cloth and mango leaves. The fire is lit with ghee and wood chips. The priest chants verses from the Rig Veda, his voice rising and falling like waves. The bride and groom circle the fire 7 times, saptapadi, each round representing a vow: nourishment, strength, prosperity, happiness, progeny, longevity, and companionship. You're briefly asked to hold a clay bowl filled with cumin and jaggery. You have no idea what it's for, but you clutch it like a sacred relic until someone gently takes it from you and sprinkles it into the fire. Then comes the shower of petals, the cheers, the smearing of red powder cum-cum on foreheads. You clap, you smile, you even tear up a little. Not because it's your wedding, but because you're just really, really tired. Mainstream historical fact marriage was one of the key transitions in the ashrama system, an ancient Indian framework dividing life into 4 stages: student brahmacharya, householder grihastha, forest dweller vanaprastha, and renunciate sannyasa. Most people spent the bulk of their lives in the second phase raising families, working, and managing worldly duties. After the ceremony, a feast is laid out on banana leaves. You're invited to sit cross-legged with the other guests. Dishes begin to appear: dal sabzi, puris sweets soaked in syrup yogurt spiced with cumin. It's a sensory overload. Quirky tidbit, in some ancient communities eating off a banana leaf was believed to enhance digestion and cleanse subtle energies. Plus, it saved on dishes something you deeply appreciate after your laundry day flashbacks. You eat until your eyes droop. Someone offers you sweetened milk with cardamom. You sip it slowly, warmth spreading through your belly like candlelight. And then, just as you think you might finally rest, there's dancing. Of course there's dancing. Drums start up. Bells jingle. Feet stomp. Someone grabs your hand and pulls you into the center of a circle. Mainstream historical fact dance was an integral part of ancient Indian life, not just for celebration, but for storytelling, prayer, and even social critique. Classical forms like Bharatanatyam and Kathak have roots in temple rituals, while folk dances were performed in fields' courtyards and during festivals. You attempt to mirror the other's arms, swaying feet, tapping hips, sort of doing something. You might look like a chicken learning Tai Chi, but no one judges. They're too busy spinning, laughing, living. Historians still debate how much of ancient Indian dance was ritualized versus spontaneous. Some argue that formal styles developed much later, while others insist early dances already had deeply codified gestures. Either way, right now you are joyfully off book. When the last drumbeat fades, when even the children collapse in giggles, you return to your mat beneath the stars. You lie down, limbs twitching with leftover rhythm. The firelight dances on nearby walls. A baby cries softly. Someone hums an old tune. Crickets take up the chorus. You made it. Not gracefully, not effortlessly, but fully. You survived ancient India. You cooked. You scrubbed. You sweated through lectures and rituals and at least one vaguely traumatic goat encounter. You were painted, pounded, powdered, and puzzled. You barely understood the language, never quite got the hang of squatting, and will never look at a butter churn the same way again. But in all that strangeness, something settled in you, a slower rhythm, a humbler perspective, a surprising sense of connection to people who lived thousands of years ago, who worked, loved, danced, and laughed in the same dust you now fall asleep on. And with that, the breeze drifts in, carrying the scent of jasmine and ash. A flame flickers out, and you sleep. Let's slow everything now. The drums are quiet. The fire has faded. The clay walls breathe cool night air. Even the goats have stopped judging you. All that movement, all that sound, the bustling kitchens, the clanking pots, the laughter under banyan trees now softens into stillness. You feel it in your shoulders, in the backs of your eyes, in the quiet ache behind your ribs. This world you stepped into, so strange, so vivid, melts gently into dream. The villagers are sleeping now. The bride, the healer, the potter, the dancer. They lie on cool mats beneath the open sky. Maybe someone's whispering a prayer. Maybe someone's just snoring. Either way, the village exhales as one. You lie there too, under ancient stars. The kind that don't blink with neon or hum with street lamps. Just endless sky and steady air. The soft chirp of crickets keeping time like a lullaby played on leaves. Your breath slows. There's no laundry to fold, no butter to churn, no scroll to memorize. Just you here now, carried by the hush of a world that kept turning long before you, and will keep turning long after. And yet, for this one long, wild, beautiful day, you were part of it. You lived it. And now it's time to let it go. Let the dust settle. Let the clay harden. Let the dreams begin. Sweet dreams.